So yeah, I guess you're asking where the magic is basically.
That's a good
Yeah.
way to put it. Yes.
A lot of times, it can be, in the assay itself, like we're saying that that's like where you want to put your priority. A lot of clients that we have, come to us with like a really specialized way of being able to get some results. So some of the special sauce ends up, just in the assay itself, but other times, it's we do more novel things on the cartridge and instrument side in order to make drive things smaller or faster or more accurately. So it's definitely a little bit of everything, and it definitely is different on a project by project basis. But I guess I would just want to make the point that even if no IP is coming out of your instrument or your cartridge in that design, that doesn't make it any less valuable or marketable of a product. There are plenty of assays, that, are doing something novel and can make like a big difference in the world. And it's just a matter of doing the diligent, detail oriented work of, doing a good cartridge and instrument design. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to do something strictly novel in order to, turn that into a full-fledged product.
Gotcha. Yeah, you've mentioned a few times cartridge, as I have. So let's focus on that a little bit. Assay is king, cartridge is queen. I guess we're making T-shirts. All right, all right. So you've developed a few cartridges over the years, or worked on them. So when you see the assay and you sit down, okay, it's going to be automated on a cartridge, it's going to be going into an instrument. What are your top considerations when you sit down to effectively architect a cartridge, assuming it's a cartridge going into an instrument? Tell me a little bit about some of your considerations there.
Yeah, I think the first and most obvious one is just reviewing the assay and trying to figure out what aspects of that assay does the cartridge need to be able to support. So, for instance, aliquoting out specific amounts of fluid, doing fluid mixing, heating, magnets, ultrasound, optical. There's all these different ways of interacting your fluid and your chemistry. So first, I think coming up with kind of like a holistic list of all of those different, aspects of your assay. I think that in addition to that, I tend to put a larger emphasis on thinking about the volumetric accuracy requirements of the assay because there's definitely, depending on how tight your tolerances need to be there in terms of your fluid volumes, it could really drive you in a specific architectural direction. So, if you're trying to pipette or, move fluid at plus or minus 0.5%. That's going to put you in a region where you're talking about, pipetting or using a syringe driver. Whereas if you're, closer to the 10 to 20%, you might be able to, meter out into a chamber on your cartridge and use optical sensing. So that's definitely one that I think is pretty impactful in terms of how it drives cartridge design and generally the system architecture. Another one I think is reagent storage. There's oftentimes, assays that will need a lyophilized reagent for something because that's how you make that reagent stable. But a fluidic or a reagent that's a fluid for something else for a different reason, chemistry wise, based on stability. So it gets challenging when you have both of those together because you have to keep your lyos dry for the whole shelf life of that cartridge, and it can be challenging when you're storing it potentially together with liquid reagents. So that's also another one that's very critical to think about early, because we've definitely learned that lesson and experienced lyophilized bead decay in cases where that's not respected.
Those are all great considerations for sure, focused on the assay. And we're about halfway through the podcast. So at about the halfway point, this is when we start talking about the user. Now I know it's about the assay, but let's talk about the user while we're halfway through here. When you're looking at automating the assay on the cartridge, talk to me about how you think about the user though.
Mhm. So I think user workflow is a big part of cartridge design and architecture definition. I guess the installation of cartridges is user action and is something that a user is going to have to do regularly when interacting with a device. So making sure that that's intuitive and usable, is really important. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of different ways that can drive the architecture, and it's pretty dependent on an assay by assay and product by product, situation.
I think my favorite case study here at KeyTech, I'm sure you can agree in terms of simplicity and easy to use, is the UltraCrit. You know, that cartridge is very simple. I mean, it's a ClearWave platform. You prick your finger, you wick blood right in. You're loading the sample directly into the cartridge that actually is going to be used to get your measurement. So, I mean, that's like the holy grail, is sample into the cartridge direct from the patient that goes direct into the instrument.